Two members of the Louisville football program have announced that they are coming back for the 2022 season. We'll talk about what that means for the team on this episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome in to another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode is brought to you by Sonos. Experience the game like never before with Sonos Arc, the premium smart soundbar for TVs, movies, music, gaming, and more. Visit Sonos.com to learn more. As always, I want to say thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast, free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. Two key members of the Louisville football program have announced that they are coming back for next season. That is offensive lineman Caleb Chandler and tight end Marshon Ford. We'll talk about what their returns mean for the Louisville offense next season. We'll also then dive into the preview, a primetime matchup for the University of Louisville women's basketball team. The third-ranked Cardinals will travel to Raleigh, North Carolina, where they will take on the fourth-ranked NC State Wolfpack in a huge ACC heavyweight clash on Thursday evening. We'll talk the key players to the game, the keys to the game, the players to watch, and some other stuff you need to know about. And then in the final segment, we will discuss what is at stake in this matchup for the Cardinals. Before we get into the content of today's show, like I mentioned, for those who are not aware of who I am, my name is Dalton Pence. I'm a credentialed media member for Cardinals Sports Zone, where I serve as both a football beat writer and a recruiting analyst. Also do some PA announcing work for the university in various sports. You can check out my personal Twitter in the graphic in the bottom left-hand of your screen. And the podcast Twitter page is at @LO_Louisville. So let's get right on into the show. Two members of the Louisville football program have announced that they are coming back, like I mentioned here just a couple seconds ago. That is offensive lineman Caleb Chandler and tight end Marshon Ford. Now, I'll be honest, coming into the offseason, Caleb Chandler had one of the best second halves of the 2021 campaign of possibly any offensive lineman in the ACC outside of NC State's Ikem Ekwonu, who is he's a projected top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Caleb Chandler was probably one of those to where, I had been told by a couple people that he was not necessarily on the fence, but, probably leaning toward going pro, and that they would be surprised if he does come back. However, it just so happened to be the opposite of what transpired. Chandler is back. I'm not a huge fan of Pro Football Focus, PFF in short. I feel like it doesn't take a lot of coverages into account, context, etc. It just kind of, strictly is judged based upon purely stats and stuff like that. So I think it's a good tool for grading and all that good jazz, but I do think that it lacks in some aspects. But if you're a fan of PFF, he was, I think, one of the highest rated offensive linemen in the country this past season, a top 100 player according to the platform. So he decides to come back. That means Louisville is returning, I think it's 4 of their 5 starters on the offensive line outside of Cole Bentley, which is huge because you bring Adonis Boone back. Brian Hudson will probably slide into Cole Bentley's the hole that Cole Bentley left at center, and then you have Caleb Chandler, playing in the guard positions. But I think that this is huge for the Louisville offense next season because one of the benefits that Malik Cunningham had this past year was the fact that he was granted a ton of time to throw the football and make decisions, go through his reads, to decide if he wants to scramble out or not. So that's huge, not only for Cunningham, but also the running game, because we saw there was a stretch in the middle half of the season where the Cardinals had 5 straight games where they rushed for over 200 yards. Now, a lot of that is on Jalen Mitchell, Travion Cooley, and Malik Cunningham, and how dynamic all 3 of those guys are as runners. But also, you can't underestimate the holes that the offensive line created, just being able to set the tone up front. There were very few instances during the season in which the Louisville offensive line struggled against the two SEC teams. Are probably the only times in which the team's offensive line struggled. So, huge returner in Caleb Chandler. I think he sets the tone for this offense. This offensive line, I should say. I can't speak. I feel like I say I can't speak at all every single episode, so I apologize on that. But there's something that I can't apologize for, and that is believing that Caleb Chandler could turn into a top 3 first round draft pick next season. I'm not over-exaggerating. I think he is that good. He's not Mekhi Becton good, obviously, but I think he is one of the next in a solid list of Louisville offensive linemen that get to the professional ranks. I think he can go in the top 3 rounds next April. So the other key returner is tight end Marshon Ford. I was very excited about this one. A little different than Caleb Chandler's situation. I heard that there was possible rumblings that he could, test the waters, which if you're Marshon, you can't necessarily blame him for trying to secure the bag. But he is coming back, betting on himself. Had 49 receptions for 550 yards and 2 touchdowns this past season. The yardage was a career high, but not necessarily what we thought we could see from him as a touchdown machine. Had 2 touchdowns in the past 2 seasons. In 19, he had 7 touchdowns, and 20, he had 6 touchdowns. I think that Malik Cunningham, this is a good opportunity for him. It's a security blanket because Marshon Ford is one of the most consistent tight ends that we've ever had here at the University of Louisville. He's a mismatch nightmare. He's if you line him up outside, he's too big to be guarded by a traditional cornerback. But if you put him inside where he usually is, he's too athletic and too quick to be checked by an opposing linebacker. So ultimately, I think that this is huge for the Louisville football team and the offense in particular. Number one, because you bring back one of the leaders of the team, a hometown 502 guy, and a staple to this offense. But number two, not only do you give Malik Cunningham his security blanket back, but you also change the whole dynamic. I'm not saying that the tight ends that would come into his spot would stink it up by any chance, because I think we have a lot of talent at tight end behind Marshon. But it's very, very evident. Marshon is one of the best tight ends in the ACC talent-wise. Now, whether the production meets that or not, whether the opportunities and the targets meet that or not, he still is a key and vital aspect to this offense. Like I said, I think it gives the offense an extra gear, so to speak, because being able to utilize such a great tight end is huge, not only for Malik, but also for the wide receiving core, in which next year, it'll be interesting to see who steps up. It'll kind of be like this past year where Jordan Watkins, Justin Marshall, and guys had to step up. Now there is no Watkins. Now there is no Marshall, and you have more guys that have to step up. You do have Amari Huggins-Bruce returning, Tyler Harrell, Braden Smith is back. So, it's set up to be a very solid wide receiver core, but it does take away some of the not necessarily responsibility, but it takes away some of the pressure to come out and perform right away. So I think that the key here is I would like to see, the offense dial up more plays in which Marshon Ford is kind of the design target. I want to see him get more targets in the game because, there was a couple games last year to where, he only had, 2 or 3 targets, but when he does get his number called, he's a guy that flat out makes things happen. That's got to be the focal point for Louisville this season, is getting him the football by any means necessary. I'm not talking about force feeding, but I think that there is he deserves a good amount of targets per game. So we'll continue to talk about returners as we hear about them. Well, actually, you probably can't, because yesterday was the deadline for guys to come back. But what I meant to say was we'll talk about potential transfers. Sorry about that. But as they come in, very excited for the 2020. I'm getting very excited for the 2022 campaign. It's fixing up to where Louisville can win a good amount of games. I now want to turn the attention to the women's basketball team, the third-ranked Cardinals, looking to put that 15-game winning streak on the line as they take on the North Carolina State Wolfpack on Thursday, 7:30 primetime ESPN matchup against the 4th-ranked Wolfpack. We'll talk about everything you need to know about that matchup here in just a second after we talk about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. And it remains the number one spot for all the sports wagering action for 2022. A new year and a new updated desktop means you can sign up today and use your promo code LOCKEDON and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports, and BetOnline is where the game starts. As I mentioned, huge matchup, the one everyone is looking forward to. The 3rd-ranked Louisville Cardinals taking on the 4th-ranked NC State Wolfpack and Wes Moore at the helm there in Raleigh. It's going to be a very big matchup, and I am kind of torn on which way I think this is going to go. I do want to talk about the players to watch for. I want to talk about the keys to the game for the Cardinals, why NC State is so good. We'll start out talking a little bit, of a get to know NC State, so to speak. The Wolfpack are 16-2 on the season. Their only losses come in the season opener to South Carolina, who's the number one team in the country. Also to the Georgia Bulldogs, that was 82-80 a couple weeks ago. Georgia is currently ranked 13th in the country, so they're a very quality squad. So far, both teams combined 12-0 in conference play. NC State has played 2 more with Louisville going into that COVID pause. But and NC State's pretty much handling their conference opposition. I think the closest game that they've had in conference play is a 12-point victory over Miami last week. All of the other ones have been wins by at least 12. NC State beat Maryland by 18 points earlier in the year. They beat Florida by 33. Beat IU, who is was ranked high to begin the year. They beat them by 8 points. So the Wolfpack are the real deal once again. Elissa Cunane is going to be the player to watch for the Wolfpack. You could go a couple of different ways. They have what ESPN ranked the number one transfer in all of the land coming in 5'5" guard Diamond Johnson. They do have Ja'Kai Brown-Turner, Kai Crutchfield, Reina Perez, etc. It's a very veteran-led group, Jada Boyd, etc. But the player to watch here is Elissa Cunane. She has been the player that Louisville has struggled with pretty much ever since she has come to Raleigh. 14.1 points per game, 7.6 rebounds per game. She's shooting the ball 54% from the field, and overall just one of the nation's best players. At 6'5". She really makes life tough for opposing front courts. She's the player to watch here for NC State because I feel like they go as she goes, as we've seen in previous matchups. NC State has struggled when Cunane is either in foul trouble or her shot's not falling. She's not able to get anything going offensively. But when she gets going, it's really hard to stop that NC State team. So, Elissa Cunane is the player to watch for here. She's been a player that's been very successful against the Cards over her career. It seems like she's been on that Wolfpack team for 15 years almost, but a very solid career for her nonetheless. Ja'Kai Brown-Turner is another player. At 6 foot, she's only averaging 8.1 points per game and 4.6 rebounds. I think the name of the game here is kind of like Louisville. It's a very balanced rotation. You're not going to see anybody score 20 points per game, but Brown-Turner is a player. With her athleticism, 6 foot frame, she really hurt the Cards last year. That's why I think that Emily Engstler is the player to watch for the Louisville Cardinals in this matchup, because I think that she changes the whole dynamic of the team when she's getting her stuff going offensively, and she is the most critical piece to the Louisville defensive puzzle, especially when you have a ton of size for NC State. I'm not saying that Emily's going to guard Cunane, because I think that that's probably going to be Cochran and Dixon, a little bit of a rotation of both. But I do like the fact that you can stick Emily Engstler on Brown Turner and some other front court pieces that they have that kind of matches athletically. And I think that that's kind of what Louisville was missing last year when Brown Turner came into the Yum Center and hurt the Cards. But overall, I think that Emily Engstler changes the dynamic of the offense when she's scoring the ball, in the way that she does, whether that be around the rim, behind the arc. She's shooting the ball well from behind the arc. I think that it puts Louisville at a different dynamic when her as a pick and roll ball handler, defending the pick and roll. It's going to be key for an NC State offense that is very, very solid. They're 13th in the nation in total scoring. They average just under 80 points per game. So it's going to be a good defense going up against a good offense, and that's where Louisville is going to have to really make their money. So, key players to the game, obviously, it's Elissa Cunane, it's Emily Engstler. The keys to the game for the Cardinals. Number one, it is limit perimeter shooting, make life tough for the NC State Wolfpack from three-point land. Right now, Westmore's team is the number one team in the country in three-point shooting. They shoot the ball 40.9% from behind the arc. That's absolutely incredible. They made 153 three-point field goals on the season. So, that's something where it's going to be really, really tough, for the Louisville Cardinals, because they have a ton of players that can come in and shoot the ball at an extremely high level. So the perimeter defense is going to be the key for the Cardinals. Albeit this season, Jeff Walls' defense has done pretty well in forcing teams to take off-balance shots they don't want to take in terms of penetrating toward the rim. But this is going to be a totally different animal. I feel like NC State is the best team that Louisville is going to play so far this season. And obviously the best three-point shooting team. The next key to the game will come in the sense of you're going to have to get players like Elissa Cunane in foul trouble. I think that the issue here is going to be not necessarily getting them in foul trouble, but getting them to turn the ball over as well. I think if you went back and forth, you could probably say forcing turnovers is probably 2, and getting the NC State Wolfpack in foul trouble is probably 2B, because this is going to be the biggest defensive test for the Cardinals this season. Obviously, we know how good of a defense they are. They're one of the best in the country, in all of the land. Currently been, they're number 4 right now, allowing 49.7 points per game to their opposition. So it's going to be just a matter of forcing turnovers. When you look at what the Cardinals are really good at when it comes to turnovers forced per game, they're sitting right, currently 20th in the country, 21.5 per game to their opposition. And I think that they are the only, they're outside of Texas, they are the only Power 5 team in that ranking. So, a lot of that is based upon your opposition. So forcing turnovers, limiting three-point field goals, it's a matter of good defense willing you to the victory here, because I would be surprised if this turns into a high-scoring affair. It's likely going to be one of those to where Louisville feels probably most if it's one of those low-scoring and the Cardinals are holding the NC State defensively. But at the end of the day, if you ask Jeff Walls, he would say, we can win by good defense, we can win by good offense. Our squad is very solid in both regards. So I want to take this time now to answer what is at stake in this matchup for both teams, especially for Louisville in particular. We'll talk about that here in just a second after we talk about our friends at Built Bar. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. It's the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar and makes it easier to stick to your resolution. If you want to eat healthy, sometimes it gets boring. By like week 3, you're thinking, okay, this just isn't worth it. Where's the chocolate? Well, Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. They give a ton of healthy benefits, leaps and bounds healthier than a true candy bar. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and an astounding 17 grams of protein. Even if you're not a huge fan of working out, you can at least eat something that tastes good and is good for you. That way, when you enjoy a delicious Built Bar, you can almost count it as a workout. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your first order. Once again, let's use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, so we are talking what is at stake in this matchup between two top 5 teams in January of ACC play. Well, number one, possible regular season conference championship is on the line here. There are implications that this could possibly decide who wins the conference. Now, look, this is no disrespect meant to any of the other teams in the conference. Obviously, any team can win on any given day, especially if a team is going on the road. However, both of these teams, both Louisville and North Carolina State, have shown that they are handling all of the opposition that they are playing. NC State in particular, 7-0 in conference. This is the only matchup between the two top 5 teams. After that, they played North Carolina and Duke again, both on the road, albeit, but both teams they have beaten by over 20 points. So you have to take into consideration the only matchup that's been close this year for the Wolfpack is a 12-point victory against the Miami Hurricanes. Am I saying that they're going to lose another game? Well, even if they do and NC State wins this game against Louisville, well, I mean, the Cards would have to at least, NC State would have to lose 2 and Louisville would have to win out, unless, you're focusing on a share of the conference championship in the regular season. But this matchup, like I mentioned, has, regular season conference championship implications. So I'm not talking about the tournament. I'm talking about getting the number 1 seed in conference tournament play. NC State has could very well run the table after this. Like I mentioned, Duke and North Carolina are the 2 top teams that they play. They do have Georgia Tech later on here in a couple weeks, which Georgia Tech is a team that could make things interesting for the Wolfpack. But I think it's clear that these are the top 2 teams. This is the top tier in the ACC. When you look at what Louisville has for the rest of the schedule, they still have to play Duke. They still have to play North Carolina. They're playing Notre Dame twice. So this is the schedule is a little bit tougher for the Cardinals than it is the Wolfpack, but I do think that Louisville is the first or the second best team in the conference. So it does have regular season seeding implications and regular season conference title implications for both Louisville and NC State. But not only that, we've seen these matchups to have a lot more impact than that, and that is on tournament seeding for the Big Dance come March. It's no doubt that there's always a debate on teams 4 through 6 on who should get that last overall number 1 seed, and even kind of spanning beyond that. A lot of times the water is murky. South Carolina currently is sitting 17-1 on the season. Stanford 13-3. Tennessee 17-1. Indiana's 14-2, and there's a couple other teams, UConn, Michigan, Iowa State, Arizona, LSU, etc. I feel like all of those could be in contention for a number 1 seed if things, if mayhem ensues, in conference tournament play or just in, conference play in general. But we could see this game have a lot of implication on the tournament. It could be the differentiating factor between a team being the number 1 seed in the tournament and being, the top number 2 seed, because a win over Louisville or over NC State, respectively, for either team would be the best victory that both teams have had thus far. It boosts Louisville tournament resume because right now, they have a pretty solid resume. They have, to date, they've beaten the number 8 team in Michigan. They beat the number 19 in UConn. Their only loss comes to number 10 Arizona. They beat number 18 Georgia Tech. They beat number 23 Kentucky, etc. They're going to have opportunities with, twice against Notre Dame, against North Carolina, against Duke. All 3 of those teams are ranked, but this could be the cherry on top victory that, gets Jeff Wall's team another number 1 seeding. So ultimately, I think that this game has, at the end of the day, it's not going to define your season. You can win an NCAA championship as the number 1 overall seed. You can win an NBA. I say NBA. My goodness. You can win an NCAA championship as the number 1 overall seed. You can win the NCAA championship as the top number 2 seed or the top number 3 seed. It's just about how you're playing, come tournament time. But I do think that there are implications when it comes to seeding and come to overall ranking that could do the Cardinals some favors when it comes to, here in the next month and a half or so. But ultimately, it's not far-fetched to say that the ACC regular season title is on the line on Thursday night down in Raleigh. Like I mentioned, that is a 7:30 primetime tip-off on ESPN. The Cardinals have struggled with NC State's size, especially last season. They do bring in a lockdown defender in Emily Engstler, who I think is going to do wonders for the Cardinal defense in this one and for the Cardinal offense, etc. There's going to be a lot of emphasis on Olivia Cochran and Liz Dixon playing well. You're going to have to, get good games from Kiana Smith and Haley Van Lith. I would like to see some stuff from Alana Smith as well and some of the other rotational pieces. But a good opportunity here for Jeff Walz with that 15-game winning streak, the longest winning streak in the country for D1 women's basketball, on the line as the Cardinals come into a matchup that likely they have had circled for quite some time. Before we get out of here, a couple quick shout-outs. First to the Cardinal Sports Zone podcast. You can get the most recent episode, which is the most listened to in Cardinal Sports Zone history. I'm talking about some inside information of the Cardinals men's basketball program. You can find that at cardinalsportszone.com. Also, the Locked On Bets podcast hosted by your boy Q with handicapping expert analysis from Lee Sterling. Get that on the Odyssey app or wherever you like to get your podcasts. Tomorrow, Jeremy Wallman back on for a special Wallman Wednesday edition of the show. We break down all 4 of the football offseason coaching hires and analyze what we like about each hire. That's going to wrap up this Tuesday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you right back here for that special episode tomorrow.